Hi everyone, my name is Morgan Soto and I'm a part of ABS 490. This is my last semester here at Arizona State University, and today I'm going to present to you the importance of genetics in wolf conservation. So first I'm going to be talking about three reintroductions of these wolves, and first I'm going to talk about the Northern Rockies. So this is Idaho, Montana, and importantly, Yellowstone. So not only has it improved numbers by reintroducing them, but has also improved genetic variation to keep diversity in gene frequencies. 31 wolves were moved to Yellowstone and 35 to central Idaho in 1995 and 1996. The wolves were wild caught and translocated to help them recover because at the time they were listed under the U.S. Endangered Species Act. The wolves came from the Canadian provinces of British Columbia and Alberta, and a historical legacy that derives from the Old World migration of the gray wolf to North America several 100,000 years ago. The reintroducing of these wolves have now made the population in those areas grow to 1,600, which has made it the most successful carnivore reintroduction to their native habitat. And because of this, in their increasing numbers, they were actually removed off of the U.S. Endangered Species Act, so hunting and stuff has become legal now, but of course not inside Yellowstone. Outside of the borders, they can hunt. So this is a figure of the reintroduction. Those areas of the stripes is the current distribution, and the suitable habitats, which pretty much just means the habitat where they were living, is the gray areas, and then the reintroduction sites where they reintroduced those numbers of wolves is the black areas. And so the areas are currently occupied by the Northern Rocky Mountain wolves. The recovery areas, it's northern Montana, like I said earlier, central Idaho, and the greater Yellowstone area. I will also be talking about the reintroduction site of the Mexican wolf, which was a part of the Blue Range recovery area, and the locations of 4 additional recovery areas on the northern rim of the Grand Canyon, central Arizona, and then northern New Mexico, southern Colorado. So lots of areas for reintroduction that we have had happen. And the recovery was to be considered successful if simultaneously each area had at least 100 individuals for a period of 3 years, and these populations were connected by genetically effective migration. So the Mexican wolf reintroduction. I love Mexican wolves, so this is a really interesting, important topic to me. So they are the smallest subspecies of gray wolf in North America that is the most endangered and genetically distinct. The landscape changes in government and private bounty hunting throughout its range reduced and isolated Mexican wolf populations so that by 1925 they were rare in the United States and extinct by the 1970s. They were listed as endangered in 1976, and only a few remained in isolated groups in Mexico. In 1998, a population of 13 Mexican wolves was introduced to eastern Arizona and western New Mexico, and 65 wolves in total in 2001. But no documented successful reproduction and recruitment in the wild happened until 2003. So part of that initial slow success seems to have been because of the reintroduced individuals were drawn from a native captive population, but after reproduction started, it seemed that the population would continue to grow and become self-sustaining. Not only dealing with the slow increase in population from 2005 to 2007, 62 animals from the most successful packs were removed because they were claimed to be depredating. So I am not sure why this happened, because removing them would cause more harm than good. And the article didn't have any information of why it happened, so I can't tell you why, but 62 animals were removed. But the good part, the positive note, is all captive wolves alive today descend from 3 captive lineages. And this is important because the crosses of lineages increased fitness in the Mexican wolves in captivity and reintroductions. But one bad thing that happened after the reintroductions was illegal killings. So the humans in the area continuously made it hard for the Mexican wolf populations to increase. Because since 1998, at least 32 animals had been illegally killed, and in those 2 cases, the killer at least was identified and successfully prosecuted, so that's the good thing, but there's a lot of killers that get away with doing that. Close to home, actually, Pine Top, Arizona, about 3.5 hours from here, there was 2 Mexican wolves also that were found dead on the side of the road. So they're offering a large amount of money actually to find who may have done that. And so it severely impacts the ability of this population to increase. And with that being said, there are genetic considerations for them, which is the reintroduced population is limited in range, and individuals that leave the recovery area are generally caught or killed. So, and the second general or genetic consideration is that initial releases of captive wolves with no previous wild experience is limited to a small area in Arizona and not permitted in New Mexico, which contains some of the best wolf habitat. So Arizona is really special in that because they participate in cross-fostering, which is where they put 4-week-old pups they put the 4-week-old pups in a mother's den, so the mother ends up raising these captive pups. So the Mexican wolves are an ongoing recovery project that needs to be continually investigated and monitored. So lastly, this is the Scandinavian recolonization. And the Scandinavian wolf population started in Norway and Sweden from a pair of animals in the 1980s and stayed less than 10 in population from loss of genetic variation. But this changed when a male naturally immigrated from Finland, Russia in 1990, which resulted in genetic rescue and population increased around 100 individuals. So inbreeding increased afterwards, declining surviving pup litters. But luckily, 2 more male immigrant wolves came into the population in 2008, and so 40 more pups were born. The Swedish government has now authorized hunting to maintain a limit of 210 wolves in Sweden. This is an excellent example of why genetic migration is so important. So, how it works is in population genetics, genes is the transfer of genetic material from one population to another. If the rate of gene flow is high enough, then 2 populations will have an equivalent allele frequencies and therefore can be considered a single effective population. Yellowstone was isolated and received no natural migrants that reproduced over a 10-year period. So this came from a study, and it reflects the difficulties that migrant wolves have in reproducing in saturated wolf systems, such as Yellowstone, and the study found that migrants are successful outside the park in a greater Yellowstone ecosystem where there's more turnover. So Yellowstone wolves do have the upper hand, though, like I said earlier, of not being hunted within the park. And so 2 radio-collared wolves were killed, which contained 40% of the population, which reduced from disease and disbanded packs. So there have been struggles because of the disease, hunting, and prey densities can change. So some other threats that wolves have to deal with is from the growth in large numbers, the federal government has allowed killing of them, which that can affect the genetic diversity. And then genetic loss could be consequential because the wolf packs generally have a single breeding pair. Habitat degradation and deforestation humans cause, along with vehicle collisions, and then livestock is a huge issue because the wolves kill the farm animals, and the farmers don't like that and will shoot and kill those wolves and also trap them. And then disease can be a big issue, which can really decline populations. So some things with genetics, one of them is genetic markers. It shows the DNA sequence of the animal and the association with an inherited disease. It answers research questions to better understand the history and population structures of the wolf. Genetic markers are used to track the inheritance of a nearby gene that is not yet identified, but whose approximate location is known. And there are 2 types of markers, linked and direct, which can be considered in genetic studies. Genetic analysis will expand our knowledge on the dispersal of wolves, including wild wolves and hybridization with dogs. Genetic analysis suggests several 100,000 wolves existed in these habitats, and wolves now living in Canada and Alaska represent just a subset of the historical variation that once existed in the American West. It will also tell how the animal uses their habitat for conservationists to better understand them. And then how does genetic sampling work? This is how they study the wolves, but no physical encounters need to happen. They take the sampling from saliva, scat, bite marks on killed prey, which can answer many questions like origin of population, gene flow, dispersal patterns, and ecological discontinuities. And this will be able to tell the genetic diversity of wolves and if there's an inbreeding depression, which that happened in the Scandinavian area, like I mentioned before. So it's not uncommon. By documenting these population and dispersal patterns, conservation managers will better know what their habitat needs the most attention, what area of habitat. So the impacts that wolves make. They make a lot of impacts. One of them, to start off with, is the trophic cascades that they have in areas. Specifically, I wanted to talk about the Yellowstone National Park cascade. So it's the top-down positive effects that they play with the animals. So they keep the elk populations in line, which has made the bison population have a normal level of numbers. And the coyote reduction, they reduced, which caused elk again to be at a equilibrium. The increase in wildlife populations, so certain birds were able to increase in numbers because they help scavengers survive by providing leftovers from hunts. They restore forests and other native vegetation and overgrazed grassland, because this is from either numerical or behavioral impacts that they have on elk. So they will keep elk numbers in line, like I mentioned, but then they will also behaviorally impact the elk. So elk won't stay for long in certain areas to overgraze. So they help with that. That's how they do that. And then because of the not being overgrazed, it prevents erosion and degradation to lands. And then they filter out sick and weak animals in herds because, wolves will eat neonates, which are young calves, but they mostly feed on the old elk that aren't able to reproduce anymore, and then they'll feed on the weak ones that are going to die anyways. And that is my presentation. Here's the first link is the article link, and then the other ones are just picture links. So thank you for watching.